Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Sterling Financial Tower, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. The 42-year-old woman had been working as a janitor in this gleaming skyscraper for 3 years, cleaning up after wealthy business people who barely noticed her existence. Every morning at 5, Maria arrived at the building, changed into her gray uniform, and began her routine. She emptied trash cans, mopped floors, and scrubbed toilets while the city still slept. By the time the first executives arrived with their expensive coffee and designer suits, Maria had already been working for hours. The woman had kind eyes and calloused hands that told the story of a lifetime spent working hard jobs. She supported her elderly mother and put herself through night school, studying business administration. Few people knew that Maria spoke 3 languages fluently or that she had graduated top of her class from community college. To most people in the building, she was just the quiet janitor who smiled politely and stayed out of their way. Richard Blackstone owned the top 3 floors of Sterling Financial Tower. The 55-year-old millionaire had built his fortune through real estate investments and corporate acquisitions. He was the kind of man who measured success only in dollars and looked down on anyone who earned less than him. Richard drove a different luxury car each day of the week and wore suits that cost more than most people made in a month. On this particular Tuesday morning, Richard stepped out of his private elevator carrying his usual morning coffee. He was talking loudly on his phone about closing a major deal when he nearly walked into Maria's cleaning cart. The collision sent cleaning supplies scattering across the marble floor. "Watch where you're going," Richard snapped, ending his phone call abruptly. His expensive Italian shoes had a small scuff mark from bumping into the metal cart. Maria quickly bent down to pick up the scattered bottles and rags. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Blackstone. I didn't see you coming around the corner." Richard looked down at her with disgust. "Of course you didn't. People like you never pay attention to what matters." He brushed an imaginary speck of dust from his jacket. "Maybe if you focused on your work instead of daydreaming, accidents like this wouldn't happen." Other employees walking by stopped to watch the scene unfold. Some looked uncomfortable, but none dared to speak up against their building's powerful owner. Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as she continued gathering her supplies. "I really am sorry, sir," Maria said quietly, standing up with her arms full of cleaning bottles. "It won't happen again." Richard checked his expensive watch and shook his head in annoyance. "I'm hosting a charity gala this Saturday at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. It's a $5,000 per plate event for the city's most influential people." He paused and looked at Maria with a cruel smile. "You know what? You should come. I'd love to see how someone like you would fit in with real success." The small crowd of employees shifted nervously. They could hear the mockery in Richard's voice, but Maria kept her expression calm and professional. "That's very kind of you to invite me, Mr. Blackstone," she replied evenly. Richard laughed loudly. "Kind? I'm being realistic. This event will have senators, judges, business leaders, and celebrities. The women wear gowns that cost more than you make in a year." He pulled out a cream-colored invitation from his briefcase and held it out mockingly. "But please do come. I'll make sure security knows to expect you." Maria reached out and took the elegant invitation. The paper felt expensive between her fingers, with raised gold lettering that announced the Annual Sterling Foundation Charity Gala. "Thank you for the invitation," she said simply. "I'll see what I can do." Richard's smile widened. He was clearly enjoying himself. "Wonderful. The dress code is black tie formal, so don't worry about finding something appropriate. I'm sure whatever you choose will be memorable." Several employees looked away in discomfort. They all knew Richard was setting Maria up for humiliation. The charity gala was one of the most exclusive events in the city, attended only by the wealthy elite. Nobody believed a janitor could possibly belong in such a setting. "I appreciate the invitation, Mr. Blackstone." Maria repeated, tucking the invitation into her uniform pocket. I should get back to my work now. Richard waved her away dismissively. Yes, please do. And try to be more careful with that cart. This marble is expensive to repair. As Maria pushed her cart down the hallway, she could hear Richard telling other employees about his hilarious invitation. He was already planning how amusing it would be to see her show up at his elegant event. Completely out of place and embarrassed. What Richard didn't know was that Maria had been saving money for years. Every extra dollar went into a special account she called her future fund. She had been planning to use the money to start her own cleaning business after finishing her business degree, but now she had a different idea. That evening, Maria sat in her small apartment with the invitation spread on her kitchen table. Her mother, Elena, looked over her shoulder at the fancy lettering. Mija, what is this? Elena asked in Spanish. It's an invitation to a very expensive party, Maria replied. My boss invited me, but not because he wants me there. He thinks it will be funny to watch me fail. Elena frowned. Then why would you go? Maria smiled for the first time since the morning's incident. Because, Mama, sometimes people need to learn that they don't know everything about everyone. Over the next few days, Maria watched Richard carefully. She noticed how he treated other service workers in the building, the security guards, delivery people, and food service staff. He spoke to all of them with the same condescending tone he used with her. Richard clearly believed that a person's job determined their worth as a human being. On Wednesday, Maria overheard Richard bragging to his business partners about the invitation he had given her. You should see this woman, he laughed. She probably thinks she can show up in her church dress and fit right in. It's going to be priceless. His friends chuckled along, already imagining the awkward scene. They made bets about whether Maria would actually show up or if she would realize how ridiculous the idea was and stay home. She'll probably stand by the walls all night, not knowing how to use the silverware, one man joked. If she shows up at all, Richard added, people like her usually know their place. Maria continued her work quietly, but inside she was making plans. She had been underestimated her entire life because of her job, her accent, and her humble background. Most people saw the uniform and assumed they knew everything about her. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. On Thursday, Maria took a personal day from work. She told her supervisor she had a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue. She was about to show her work family something they would never forget. Friday evening, Maria sat down with her laptop and opened her bank account. She looked at the numbers on the screen and took a deep breath. The money represented years of sacrifice, skipped meals, and extra shifts. It was supposed to secure her future, but now she was going to invest it in something else entirely: her dignity and self-respect. She thought about all the times people had dismissed her because of her job, the customers who acted like she was invisible, the office workers who spoke about her as if she couldn't understand English, and now Richard's cruel invitation. Maria realized that sometimes you had to spend money to show people that their assumptions were wrong. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but Maria woke up feeling more determined than ever. She had appointments to keep and preparations to make. Richard Blackstone had no idea what kind of woman he had challenged. He was about to learn that success and class couldn't be judged by someone's uniform or paycheck. As Maria got dressed in her regular clothes and prepared to leave her apartment, she looked at herself in the mirror. In a few hours, she would walk into the Grand Metropolitan Hotel and show everyone what real elegance looked like. The janitor they ignored was about to become the woman they would never forget. Maria's first stop was downtown at Bella's Beauty Salon, an upscale establishment she had researched online. The owner, Isabella, was a warm Italian woman who had built her reputation transforming ordinary people into stunning beauties for special occasions. I need the works, Maria told Isabella, showing her the elegant invitation. Hair, makeup, nails, everything. Isabella examined Maria's thick, dark hair and studied her bone structure. You have beautiful features, honey. We just need to bring out what's already there. She smiled knowingly. Someone special you're trying to impress? Something like that, Maria replied. I want to look like I belong at the most exclusive event in the city. For the next 4 hours, Isabella and her team worked their magic. They styled Maria's hair into an elegant updo with soft curls framing her face. The makeup artist enhanced her natural beauty with subtle contouring and a sophisticated smoky eye. The manicurist painted her nails a classic deep red that would complement whatever dress she chose. While her nails dried, Maria called her friend Carmen, who worked as a personal shopper at the city's most exclusive department store. Carmen, I need a favor. A big one. Anything for you, Prima? Carmen replied. What's going on? Maria explained the situation and her plan. Carmen was quiet for a long moment before bursting into laughter. Maria, you're crazy, but I love it. Meet me at Nordstrom in an hour. We're going to find you a dress that will make jaws drop. At the department store, Carmen led Maria to the designer evening wear section. The dresses hanging here cost more than most people's monthly rent, but Maria was committed to her plan. Tell me about the event, Carmen said, pulling several gowns from the racks. Who will be there? What's the venue like? The Grand Metropolitan Ballroom, Maria answered. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities. My boss expects me to show up looking like I don't belong, so I can be his entertainment for the evening. Carmen's eyes flashed with anger. Oh, honey, we're going to give him entertainment, all right. She held up a stunning black evening gown with intricate beadwork. Try this. The dress fit perfectly, hugging Maria's curves in all the right places while maintaining an air of sophisticated elegance. The beadwork caught the light beautifully, and the flowing skirt moved like liquid silk. It's perfect, Carmen breathed. You look like a movie star. But Maria wasn't finished. She purchased matching accessories, a beaded clutch, elegant heels, and simple diamond earrings. The total was staggering, representing months of her savings, but seeing herself in the dressing room mirror, Maria knew it was worth every penny. One more stop, Carmen said mysteriously. Trust me. They went to a luxury car rental agency where Carmen had connections through her job. Within an hour, Maria had arranged to rent a sleek black Mercedes for the evening, complete with a professional driver named James. Ma'am, I'll pick you up at 7:30, James said respectfully. The drive to the Grand Metropolitan takes about 20 minutes. As evening approached, Maria returned home to prepare. She took a long bath with expensive bath oils Carmen had insisted she buy. She carefully applied her makeup, following the techniques the salon artist had shown her. When she slipped into the designer gown, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. The transformation was complete. The woman looking back at her wasn't a janitor or a cleaning lady. She was sophisticated, elegant, and confident. Maria Santos had become someone who could walk into any room and command respect. Her mother gasped when she saw her. Mija, you look like a princess. I feel like one too, Maria admitted. I just hope I can carry this off. You can, Elena said firmly. You've always been special. Tonight everyone else will see it too. At 7:30 sharp, James knocked on her door. He was a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, wearing a crisp chauffeur's uniform. When he saw Maria, his professional composure slipped for just a moment. Mrs. Santos? Ma'am, you look absolutely stunning. Thank you, James. I'm a little nervous. Don't be, he said kindly, offering her his arm. I've driven many wealthy people to fancy events. You belong there more than most of them. The Mercedes glided through the city streets as Maria watched the lights blur past the window. She thought about Richard's mocking smile and the cruel laughter of his friends. They expected her to show up looking uncomfortable and out of place. Instead, she was going to arrive looking like she owned the place. As they approached the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, Maria could see the red carpet stretched across the sidewalk. Photographers were stationed behind velvet ropes, snapping pictures of arriving guests. Luxury cars pulled up one by one, depositing elegantly dressed couples who walked confidently into the grand entrance. "Ready, ma'am?" James asked as they joined the line of arriving vehicles. "Ready," Maria replied, though her heart was beating fast. When their turn came, James stepped out and walked around to open her door. Camera flashes immediately began popping as photographers assumed she must be someone important arriving in such style. Maria stepped out gracefully, her head held high, and walked toward the entrance with the confidence of a woman who knew she looked spectacular. Inside the hotel lobby, Maria paused to take in the scene. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over the crowd of beautifully dressed guests. The air buzzed with conversation and laughter as the city's elite mingled before entering the ballroom. She recognized several faces from newspaper society pages: a federal judge, the mayor's wife, a famous local news anchor, and various business leaders. These were people accustomed to being the most important person in any room, and they carried themselves with the easy confidence that came from wealth and power. Maria straightened her shoulders and walked toward the ballroom entrance. She had studied etiquette videos online and practiced walking in heels around her apartment. Tonight, all that preparation would pay off. At the ballroom doors, she presented her invitation to the man checking credentials. He looked at the elegant card, then at Maria, then back at the invitation with confusion. "I'm sorry, miss, but this invitation is made out to..." He consulted his list. "Maria Santos?" "That's me," she replied with a calm smile. The man's eyes widened. He had clearly been told to expect someone very different. After a moment's hesitation, he stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. "Welcome to the Sterling Foundation Charity Gala, Miss Santos." The ballroom was breathtaking. Round tables draped in white linens filled the space, each decorated with towering floral arrangements. A small orchestra played soft classical music, while guests enjoyed cocktails and appetizers. The room practically glowed with wealth and sophistication. Maria accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and began to move through the crowd. She noticed several people turning to look at her, whispering among themselves about the striking woman in the beaded black gown. Nobody recognized her as the building's janitor. In this setting, wearing this dress, she was simply an elegant lady who clearly belonged among the city's elite. Across the room, Richard Blackstone was holding court with a group of business associates. He was gesturing animatedly with his cocktail, obviously telling an entertaining story. Every few moments, his eyes would scan toward the entrance, clearly watching for Maria's arrival. He expected to see a nervous woman in an ill-fitting dress, clutching an old purse and looking around in wide-eyed confusion. Instead, the entrance kept admitting one elegantly dressed woman after another, but none of them was the janitor he had invited. "She's probably too embarrassed to show up," Richard told his friends. "I bet she realized how ridiculous the whole thing was." "Probably for the best," one of his companions agreed. "Can you imagine the poor woman trying to navigate a 7-course dinner? She wouldn't know which fork to use." They all laughed, but Richard felt slightly disappointed. He had been looking forward to the entertainment of watching Maria struggle through the evening. Without her there to mock, the joke had fallen flat. What Richard didn't realize was that Maria was already in the room, moving gracefully among the guests just 20 feet away from him. She was engaged in a pleasant conversation with the mayor's wife about local art galleries, demonstrating the education and intelligence that her work uniform had hidden. The evening was about to take a turn that Richard Blackstone could never have anticipated. The woman he had invited as a joke was not only present, but she was quickly becoming the most talked-about guest at his own party. As the cocktail hour continued, Maria found herself the center of several fascinating conversations. Her years of night school and extensive reading had given her knowledge about art, literature, politics, and business that impressed everyone she spoke with. The mayor's wife, Margaret Chen, was particularly taken with her. "You have such interesting insights about urban development," Margaret said. "Are you in city planning?" "I work in commercial real estate," Maria replied smoothly, which was technically true since she worked in a commercial building. "I see how different policies affect working people every day." Nearby, Judge Harrison was discussing criminal justice reform with a small group. When Maria politely joined the conversation, she offered thoughtful perspectives that drew nods of agreement from the distinguished lawyer. "That's exactly right," Judge Harrison said. "Too many people making policy have never seen how it affects people at ground level. You clearly understand the real-world impact." Word began to spread through the ballroom about the mysterious, elegant woman who seemed to know something about everything. People wanted to meet her, to find out who she was, and how they hadn't encountered her before in their social circles. "There's something special about her," the CEO of a major corporation told his wife. "She's not just another society wife, she actually thinks." Meanwhile, Richard was growing increasingly frustrated. He kept glancing toward the entrance, but there was still no sign of the janitor he had invited. His friends had stopped asking about her, moving on to other topics of conversation. "I can't believe she didn't show," Richard muttered to his assistant, who was helping coordinate the evening. "I was sure she'd take the bait." "Maybe she realized it wasn't appropriate, sir," his assistant replied diplomatically. Richard scanned the room one more time, then decided to focus on his other guests. The evening was meant to raise money for his charitable foundation, and several major donors needed his attention. At 8 o'clock, the dinner chimes sounded, and guests began moving toward their assigned tables. Maria checked her place card and found herself seated at table 7, between a prominent doctor and a successful businesswoman. The table assignments had been carefully planned to encourage networking and conversation among influential people. As she took her seat, Dr. Rebecca Martinez introduced herself. "I don't think we've met before. I'm Rebecca, Chief of Surgery at City General." "Maria," she replied with a smile. "Lovely to meet you." "What brings you to tonight's event?" asked Thomas Wright, a venture capitalist sitting across from her. "Mr. Blackstone personally invited me," Maria answered truthfully. "He thought I should see how this type of event works." "How nice of Richard," Dr. Martinez said. "He doesn't usually invite people unless they can contribute significantly to his causes. You must be very successful in your field." Maria smiled mysteriously. "I work hard and try to make a positive impact wherever I am." The conversation flowed easily as the first course arrived. Maria had studied dining etiquette online and navigated the multiple forks and wine glasses with confidence. Her table companions found her charming and intelligent, and several asked for her business card. At the head table, Richard was making small talk with the mayor and other VIP guests, but his attention kept wandering. He was still bothered by Maria's absence. The whole point of his cruel invitation had been to embarrass her, but she had robbed him of that satisfaction by not showing up. "Richard, you seem distracted tonight," observed Senator Patricia Williams. "Everything all right?" "Fine, fine," Richard replied. "Just thinking about business matters." As the salad course was served, the evening's program began. Richard stood up to address the crowd, speaking about the importance of charitable giving and community support. He was a polished speaker, and the audience listened respectfully as he outlined the foundation's recent accomplishments. "Tonight, we're here to support programs that help people improve their lives," Richard said. "Education, job training, entrepreneurship. These are the tools that lift people out of poverty and into success. There was polite applause, though several guests noticed the irony of a man who treated working people poorly, talking about helping them succeed. Before we continue, Richard announced, I'd like to recognize some special guests who've joined us tonight. We have several community leaders who represent the best of our city's values. He began introducing various notable attendees, the judge, the mayor's wife, prominent business leaders. The spotlight moved around the room as each person stood and waved to acknowledge the recognition. At table 7, Maria listened to the introductions with growing amusement. She realized that Richard still had no idea she was in the room. In his mind, she remained the invisible janitor who had been too intimidated to accept his mocking invitation. We also have some new faces tonight, Richard continued. I always enjoy meeting successful people who are making their mark in our city. It was then that Dr. Martinez did something unexpected. She leaned over to whisper to Maria, then stood up and raised her hand. Richard, I'd like you to meet someone extraordinary, Dr. Martinez called out. This is Maria Santos, and she's been the most interesting person I've talked to all evening. Her insights on community development have been remarkable. The spotlight swung toward table 7, illuminating Maria as she gracefully rose to her feet. There was a moment of complete silence as Richard stared at her from across the room. The woman standing in the spotlight looked nothing like the janitor he knew. This woman was sophisticated, elegant, and commanded attention. Her gown sparkled under the lights, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in the finest company. Richard's face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, and finally shock. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Around the room, people were applauding the beautiful woman who had clearly made an impression on Dr. Martinez. Thank you, Maria said graciously, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. Dr. Martinez is too kind. I'm honored to be here tonight supporting such important work. She sat back down amid continued applause, while Richard remained standing at the podium, visibly struggling to process what he was seeing. Isn't she lovely? Dr. Martinez said to the other people at the table. Maria was just telling us about her work in commercial real estate, such a fresh perspective on urban development. Thomas Wright nodded enthusiastically. I'd love to hear more about your projects, Maria. We should have lunch next week. Around the table, business cards began appearing as successful people sought to connect with this impressive woman who had somehow escaped their notice before tonight. At the head table, Richard finally sat down, but he couldn't take his eyes off Maria. The woman he had invited as a joke had not only attended his exclusive event, but was clearly thriving in it. She looked like she belonged there more than some people who had paid $5,000 for their seats. His business partner leaned over. Richard, you look like you've seen a ghost. Who is that woman everyone's talking about? That's... Richard started, then stopped. How could he explain that the elegant, sophisticated woman commanding respect from doctors and business leaders was the same person he had mocked for pushing a cleaning cart? That's Maria Santos. Well, she's certainly made an impression. Dr. Martinez can't stop singing her praises, and Judge Harrison was just telling me about her insights on criminal justice. You should introduce me later. Richard nodded weakly, his mind reeling. Everything he thought he knew about Maria had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. As the evening progressed, Maria continued to impress everyone she met. She discussed art with gallery owners, talked business with entrepreneurs, and shared thoughtful opinions on social issues with nonprofit leaders. By the end of the night, she had been invited to 3 different charity events, offered 2 potential business partnerships, and asked to join the board of a local arts organization. When the dancing began, she was never without a partner. Distinguished gentlemen competed for the chance to dance with the mysterious woman who had appeared from nowhere and captivated the entire room. Richard watched from the sidelines, nursing his whiskey and trying to understand what had happened to his evening. He had planned to humiliate Maria, but instead she had shown him and everyone else just how little he actually knew about the people around him. As the party wound down, Maria made her way through the room, thanking her new acquaintances and exchanging contact information. When she finally approached Richard, he was standing alone by the bar, looking deflated. "Mr. Blackstone," she said pleasantly, "thank you for inviting me tonight. It was a wonderful evening." Richard stared at her, still speechless. Up close, her transformation was even more remarkable. This poised, confident woman bore little resemblance to the quiet janitor he thought he knew. "I don't understand," he finally managed. "How did you... who are you, really?" Maria smiled gently. "I'm exactly who I've always been, Mr. Blackstone. You just never bothered to look beyond my uniform." She started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and thank you for the lesson in assumptions. It was very educational." As Maria left the ballroom, Richard remained at the bar, contemplating everything that had just happened. The janitor he had dismissed and mocked had just schooled him in front of the entire city's elite. She had shown grace, intelligence, and class, while he had revealed his own prejudices and limitations. Outside, James was waiting with the Mercedes. As they drove through the quiet city streets, Maria reflected on the evening. She had spent a significant portion of her savings, but she had gained something far more valuable: the knowledge that she could hold her own in any company, and the satisfaction of proving that a person's worth couldn't be judged by their job title or paycheck. Monday morning would come soon enough, and she would return to her cleaning cart and gray uniform, but she would never be the same woman who had been humiliated in that hallway. She had proven something to herself and to Richard Blackstone that neither of them would ever forget. The invisible janitor had become unforgettable.